Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to share with you the 5 best Ark starter tames, and just before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps the channel. In at number 5 is the Stego. Now I would definitely classify this thing as a starter tame, and in this video I'm going to be classifying anything that can be tamed under level 50 very easily as a starter tame, and the Stego definitely falls into that category. You can probably tame this thing very easily around level 20, and it is an absolutely insane berry harvester for how easy it is to tame. If you're fast enough, this thing simply isn't going to catch up to you, and you can continue to trank it until it's knocked out. In terms of method, only tame one of these that is singled out from a pack, as if you are taming one that is in a pack, the pack is going to come after you as soon as you start tranking the Stego that you're trying to tame, and you can just get overwhelmed and lose absolutely everything, and we don't want that to happen, especially at this stage of the game, as it will make your progress so much slower. Once you do have the Stego tamed, this thing is an absolutely amazing berry harvester, but also a pretty good combat creature as well, and if you're on a PvP server, this is actually a good tank as well. Turrets are going to do basically nothing to this thing as long as you are using the hardened plate. And talking of those plates, it has 2 other plates as well. The sharpened plate is best if you're doing combat or harvesting, and the heavy plate is better for other kind of harvesting like wood. In at number 4 is the Carb Enemies. Now when you're a beginner, you may see these things on the beach and just be like, why would I want to tame one of these things, and also why is their saddle so expensive? Trust me, that cementing paste actually isn't too bad to gather if you just put a bit of effort into it, and for taming one of these things, it is actually worth it. You can tame this thing at around level 10 by using a slingshot. You're not going to need tranks, but also don't tame a ridiculously high level, as these things are buff when it comes to dealing torpor to them. They do have torpor reduction, so when you do hit them, make sure to not hit them on their shell. Also, once you have tamed these things, these are great as well for doing any kind of low end combat. These things can harvest meat in a pinch, but mainly what I would use these things for is using it as a water creature, as these things are really slow on land, but in the water they're not actually too bad, and it is a very viable solution in the early game for getting oil and silica pearls. Trust me, they may not be useful at the moment, but in the later game you will thank yourself for gathering all of those oil and silica pearls. The Carb Enemies pretty much spawns everywhere, so you won't have trouble finding it, and the reason why it is so good as an underwater creature is you don't even need to go underwater to tame it. Now you may have not experienced the Ark Oceans yet, but they are pretty vicious, so you try to stay away from them as best as possible, which is why the Carb Enemies is so good, as you don't even need to enter the ocean to have a good underwater tame. In at number 3 is the Pteranodon. Now you probably instantly know why this thing is on the list. In Ark, you should really try to get a flyer as soon as possible, and considering its saddle is unlocked at level 38, it does qualify for this list by quite a big margin. The only thing is about its saddle, it does take quite a lot of chitin or keratin. It takes 75 of it, so you may have to grind a bit to get that depending on your settings, but it is not too bad, and it is definitely well worth the grind, as the Pteranodon is an absolutely amazing flyer for the early game. Yes, it may not have the best stamina stat or the best weight stat in the game out of any flyer, but this thing definitely does excel in speed and ease of transport, as long as you do level up its weight enough, as for some lower levels their weight is simply so bad you cannot even carry anything around when flying on this thing. But considering you tame a decent leveled one, probably about 50 or over, this thing is going to be great, and it's going to make so much of a difference to your arc progress, as now you can travel around the map without really having a risk of being killed, as long as you're playing on PvE. On PvP, you're not really safe anywhere, and for beginners, I would recommend PvE before any kind of PvP play. But I'm not going to be the kind of person to say only play PvE. You can play PvP if you want to as well. In terms of use, the Pteranodon is actually quite useful in the early game for gathering metal. Yes, its weight stat isn't amazing, but it isn't too bad at gathering around 50 metal at a time, and for this stage of the game, that is perfectly fine for at least a couple of days of Ark playing. In at number 2 is the Siler. Now strictly this shouldn't count to the list, as its saddle is unlocked at level 51, but it's so close to 50 I'm going to count it, as this creature is going to make a massive difference to your Ark journey. Yes, a Pteranodon is probably going to be your flyer at the moment when you're around level 50, but you're going to need a good, small, efficient land creature as well, as you can't just get around everywhere in the sky. Also, metal runs are a lot easier on a Siler than a Pteranodon, and considering how much damage it does and how many abilities it has for traversing mountains and just general tough terrain, this thing is a great solution to that Pteranodon low weight stat. Also, on top of that, its melee damage does have a bleed ability, which means this thing can really pack a lot of damage. This thing can easily kill Gigas, and trust me, it may not seem like it, but it is definitely possible if you have a high enough level Siler. The only real downside is you have to tame these things in the Redwoods, and at this stage of the game, and really any stage of Ark, the Redwoods is not a place you want to be in for that long, so definitely be careful when taming these things, and also be on the lookout. These things will be hung up in trees, and they'll be ready to pounce on any enemy below them. Make sure that's not you. If you do spot one that you want to tame, trank it from afar, and then it will drop from the tree, and then you can trap it or trank the rest of the way until it's tamed. And finally, in at number 1 is the Baryonyx. Now this does qualify for the list, as its saddle is unlocked at level 49. And by far this is the creature that is going to make the biggest difference on the list. Yes, it may not quite have the mobility of something like the Siler, but it has something else up its sleeve which the Siler could never achieve. And that is, this thing is the best creature by far for doing any kind of caving. And caving is the route to progress in Ark. If you don't do the caves, you can't do the bosses on Ark, and if you don't do the bosses, then you can't complete the map, and you're missing out on a lot of tech engrams and a lot of elements that I'm sure you would enjoy if you actually had it. So that is why you really do need a Baryonyx. Also, on top of that, its health does actually stack up pretty well. This thing can definitely put up a decent fight, and it is also great for the underwater caves as well, and it even has a special ability. When pressing C on your keyboard, it will do a spinning attack. Also, did you know that that ability can stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon underwater? So it definitely is powerful. Also, this thing doesn't get stuck on everything in the Ark world like a Rex, and this thing definitely is not frustrating to use in any way. It is very agile, very quick, it has a decent health stat, and it has a very good melee stat. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you could absolutely demolish Gigas with a high level one of these. But like every good creature, it still does have a major flaw, which is it spawns in the swamp. And if you haven't experienced a bad thing in this swamp yet, you are definitely very lucky. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Did you agree with this top 5? If not, comment your top 5 down below, and I will see you all later. Bye.